A few months ago, I released a video looking at the main characters of Kamen Rider Zi-O and speculating who out of all of them is most likely to become the evil future version of Geo known as Oma Geo. A couple weeks after I released the video, in an episode of the show, it was shown that Oma Geo really was Sougo Tokiwa, albeit a much older version of him. So, because of that, today, I'm going to be taking a look at how Sougo manages to go from this innocent, dorky sort of character to a hardened, badass, hard-boiled overlord. But before we can get into this, I first want to talk about the possibility that this still is not really Sougo. The scene that I usually see people using to prove this theory is the scene where we actually meet Oma Sougo in 2068. The entire scene is framed in a way that we never see Oma Sougo's face, only slight glimpses at it. Along with that, we don't get a full mugshot of him. This could be because, since this isn't really Sougo, Toei doesn't really want us to realize this. But, I'm sorry, at this point in the show, speculation over whether or not this still isn't Oma Geo seems a little pointless to me, because we already have confirmation that Oma Geo looks like an older version of Sougo, since Sougo and Tsukiyomi are able to recognize this person. Along with that, we even have some imagery of Geo turning into Oma Geo, and White Waz even acknowledges Sougo when he says he comes from a future with no overlord. Sure, maybe some cases can be made that this still isn't Sougo, but you'd have to pitch a pretty hard theory, because at this point, they haven't shown any facelifting abilities just like in Kamen Rider Build, so really you can't say this is someone wearing Sougo's face. So with that, now let's speculate how Sougo becomes the Demon King of 2068 and possibly how it can be averted in the series. Because as I've said before, the series doesn't really present Sougo as the evil Demon King of the future, almost the exact opposite. At this point in time, it is a huge mystery how his personality makes such a massive change. First off, one could say that Sougo could become Oma Geo and gain his form and powers, but he doesn't actually become evil until around 2068 when he is known as the Demon King. After all, 50 years is enough time for Sougo to possibly lose faith in his beliefs and just become the twisted overlord of the future. But as easy as it could be to say this, we know that the day of Oma is fast approaching, and that's the point in time where Oma Geo destroys the world and becomes evil. So yeah, that's a no-go for a gradual change of heart. So something quickly needs to happen to Sougo's personality for this evil change to occur. Obviously, this will require some kind of artificial change to Sougo's personality. There are two ways that I think could happen, and these are the two theories that I will be explaining in this video. One is that the time trackers change Sougo, and two is from the Geo powers themselves. Let's start with number one. I mentioned this theory in the previous video, but here I'm going to go a little more in depth. As we know, the time trackers are the villains of the season, and they are trying to replace Oma Geo with a king of their own in the form of another riders. They obviously keep failing because they're the villains, and this is Kamen Rider, so the heroes naturally win almost all the time. However, it would be interesting if the show is in a position where they already won, and Oma Geo is actually their king that they placed on the throne. The big question here, of course, is how would that work? And the key to answering this question is the Another Riders. The Another Riders are monstrous versions of the Kamen Rider they are based off of. And as we see, for the most part, they retain that rider's powers on some level. Another Forze can use modules, another build can use best matches, etc. And we also know that Kamen Riders can receive the powers of another rider, such as Kamen Rider Genom receiving the powers of another O's, and Kamen Rider Shinobi receiving the powers of another Shinobi. Another Shinobi actually helps out a lot with this theory. Not only is he an another rider made from a rider that comes from the future, much like Oma Geo, but he also appears to be under some form of mind control. We see Rentaro reject the Another Shinobi watch, only to become evil again when Swords plugs the watch back into him. So now that we've taken a look at these facts, how does all of this factor into the creation of Oma Geo? Well, Oma Geo is essentially a future rider along the lines of Shinobi or Quiz. Along with that, he is more or less a monstrous version of Geo, but at the very least he is very clearly an evil version. So then you have to wonder, could Oma Geo be in another Rider version of Geo? A lot of things fall in place for this to be true, especially if it's possible that by the time the Jackers create Oma Geo, they have perfected the Another Ride watches, and that's why Oma Geo looks evil, but not monstrous or disgusting. Along with that, maybe this Another Ride watch is perfected so that the Jackers don't need to worry about Sougo not bowing to their control, because they have perfected the Ride Watch mind control that was demonstrated with another Shinobi. This could be some kind of mind control that makes Sougo loyal to the Time Jackers and therefore evil, but he still retains his normal personality, similar to what we saw with Shinobi. That's why in the future, Oma Sougo still believes that he is the best Demon King ever, despite the obvious evidence that disproves this. Along with that, maybe because of his tainted morals, at some point in the future, Oma Geo decides that he doesn't need the Time Jackers, and he even breaks off his alliance with them, and could very well kill them. Now to address some counterpoints with this theory. One is, if Oma Geo was a creation of the Time Jackers, why do they want to come to the past to dethrone him? Well, Oma Geo in the future might still make sure to oppress the people so that the Time Jackers in 2068 actually choose to go back to the past and continue the time loop. He's keeping history on its path, much like the Black Walls was doing earlier in the show. I feel like that it's something at least one of them would choose to do in order to keep their positions of power in the future. Another two counterpoints may be how the Time Jackers don't know Oma Geo was their own creation, and why we never see them with Oma Geo in the future. I combined both of these together because they can both be explained pretty easily. First of all, these both pretty much cancel each other out. If we don't see the Jackers with Oma Geo, then there's no way they can know he is or was their creation. We might not see the Time Jackers because Oma Geo either broke off with them and killed them, like I said earlier, or they could be more like the puppet masters from the shadows. Famous people in history like Jean-Baptiste Colbert or Clemens von Metternich had a lot of power in their countries, but were not necessarily the faces of said countries. They were more like masterminds in the background, manipulating events in their country while letting their respective kings have more time in the spotlight and being the ones people perceive as their ruler. A similar thing could be happening here with the Time Jackers if they are still aligned with Oma Geo. Along with that, it still fits with them wanting to keep the flow of time, because I'm sure that their younger selves never saw themselves next to Oma Geo, the person they want to get rid of. Overall, I think that there is huge potential for the Time Jackers causing the creation of the Demon King of 2068. But now, let's get into the second theory. The second theory focuses on Sougo and his powers as Kamen Rider Zi-O. As I mentioned, currently Sougo does not seem that likely to become Oma Geo. He doesn't possess any largely evil traits, and is for the most part a little bit of a klutz. At least it seemed like that. At the beginning of the series, no doubt Sougo seemed like the least likely person to become the Demon King, because everyone else was speculating it was someone else. But then, as time went on, we saw him show slightly more cunning traits. For example, his manipulation of Kuroto Dan and Gates when he defeated Gates to be let into Kuroto's royal guard, only to eventually end up defeating Kuroto himself and gaining the powers of Kamen Rider O's. Then we have him navigating himself through the past in order to change history and bring Gates back from Helheim. Hell, he even planned on the Time Jackers stealing the Kamen Rider watch and sending that into Helheim as well. Sougo has shown that he shouldn't be underestimated, at least not to an extreme degree like everyone has been doing. But notice this has only started happening after he had the powers of Kamen Rider Zi-O for a little while, more specifically around the end of October, so about 2 months after Sougo had been active as Zi-O, since it is confirmed he becomes Zi-O in the beginning of September. I'm pretty sure that you see where I'm going with this. I'm suggesting that the powers of Kamen Rider Zi-O are slowly corrupting Sougo's mind and turning him into Oma Geo. However, it seems as if this is a gradual change to Sougo's mind, and it probably wouldn't corrupt Sougo's mind enough in time for the day of Oma. At least, this base form of Kamen Rider Zi-O. So how could this process be sped up? Zi-O's power-ups. We have yet to see Sougo acquire a mega powerful upgrade, as the Decade Ride Watch is essentially just an upgraded and glorified Legend Rider Watch. Perhaps when he eventually gains his next upgrades, then we will really start to see this corruption dig into his mind. The best part about this theory is that forms that corrupt Kamen Riders are common in the franchise. Some recent examples are Tattle Fantasy, Type Dead Heat, and the Hazard form, but these kinds of forms have been appearing for a while now. Sougo will be faced with a dilemma of whether or not to keep becoming Geo, as doing so brings him closer and closer to his evil self. But because the villains will be so powerful by this point, Sougo will have no choice but to don these powerful forms at the cost of his own good nature. By the time the day of Oma arrives, in theory, the Sougo we knew at the beginning of the series should be gone at this point. All that is left is Oma Sougo, Oma Geo. Oma Geo will be the personification of this loss to Sougo's mind, the ultimate power for the ultimate evil being. And as it seems now, there doesn't really seem to be a way to counteract Kamen Rider Zi-O turning into Oma Geo. Even if they counter the Time Jackers, if that is what ends up happening, then possibly the powers of Kamen Rider Zi-O are what end up corrupting Sougo. So no matter what, it seems as if Oma Geo is the destiny of Kamen Rider Zi-O and Sougo Tokiwa. They are really going to have to dance around a lot of things if either of these series become true. Or some crazy stuff is definitely going to happen if they're going to prevent Oma Geo from coming true. So those are my two best theories on how Sougo could become the Demon King of the future. The day of Oma is almost upon us. So let me know your theories on how Sougo will become Oma Geo, or how you think he will avoid this apparent destiny in the future. But I mean, if we're being real here, who would want to miss out on the opportunity to become this deliciously evil suit? Damn, I would totally take this as my rider form if it was given to me. I mean, too bad about the evil overlord stuff.
そんな力が手に入るなら願ってもないんだけど、魔王になっちゃったらまずいかな。
Wait. Am I Oma Geo? Wait.